Welcome back, everybody. I'm Naha, and this is 30 Days of Tarot. You know, as we approach the end of the month, I'm reflecting a lot on the things that I have gained and learned and discovered over the course of this series. And one of the things is this amazing sense of community and family that's come out of this with all of you who have followed along on this journey with me. And it's so fascinating for me to think about this connection that we now have with each other, all of you from all different corners of the world, and obviously that being woven together with our shared love of tarot, but also the interesting interweavings of people who both have the same deck, or people who have similar interpretations of the cards, or have similar questions, or have similar interests in the areas and the little pathways and windings of the tarot that they want to explore more. So it's just been such a cool experience to see that come together and feel this bonding with you guys through the platform of YouTube. And there's something that one of you, Justine, said in a comment some videos back about the great deal of restraint that I must have for not just opening up all of these packages right when they came. And I kind of made a joke that I didn't think it was as much about restraint as probably maybe a little bit of anxiety about doing each of these decks justice. But the deck that I want to open today, I think that it is in its own special category because sometimes there can be a sense of when you receive something new that you know that once you start working with it, once you start interacting with it, it will change you. And sometimes change can be, almost always, like there is a little bit of fear around that. It can be a little bit scary. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? When there's something that you're excited about, there's something maybe you haven't tried before, a place you haven't been before, something you haven't interacted with, and you know that once you do it, you will never be the same. Now, I'm not saying that opening this deck today is going to change my life. But I do think that with any deck that you open, with any new way that you explore the tarot, it expands your knowledge of the tarot. It breaks you out of what your maybe blinders were in some areas or some cards or some interpretations. And while that should be welcomed, and while really, I do welcome the expansion, it can also be a little bit stressful. So I have saved this deck towards the end of this series because I do feel that it is going to be a more impactful deck for me. And who knows, maybe I've built it way up and it's not going to affect me at all and I'm not even going to use it. But what I'm sharing with you guys today is, this is coming from Barre, Massachusetts, from a woman named M.M. Meline. And I can't remember how I came into awareness of this deck. I do believe that this work is on Kickstarter, but I don't think that's where I originally saw it. So M.M. Meline is an artist and creator, as I said, that lives in Barre, Massachusetts, which is a town in the center of Massachusetts, where, if you don't know, is up on the northeastern side of the United States, up in the northeastern corner next to New York. And I looked up this town. It has just over 5,000 people population-wise. And the distance between Los Angeles and Massachusetts is so vast. I've noticed that when I asked you guys where you live, I've got a lot of overseas subscribers and a lot of people in Europe. And just to get an idea, the distance between Los Angeles and Massachusetts is the same as if you went from Paris, France, all the way to Tehran, the capital of Iran, like through all of Europe and down into the Middle East. So it's far. And sometimes it can feel like the Northeast versus the Southwest. It is like two different worlds. But somehow I came across this deck. It was very popular for a little while online, so it doesn't shock me. But she has created multiple decks, and I found on a tiny little bio of hers online that she is a creator to the power of the number 93, which is a little tip of the hat to Thelema. That is Aleister Crowley's teachings, if you're familiar with the Thoth deck at all. And it also said Pagan, Buddhist, Jedi Knight, probably just a Thelemite. One of the first decks that I really got into after my initial Rider-Waite deck, after I did start taking my studies of tarot very serious, was a deck that I received from one of my teachers, and that's my Thoth deck. And yes, sometimes I call it Thoth, sometimes I call it Thoth. There's so many different pronunciations. And so this deck has always been very special to me since it was gifted to me by my teachers. And very, very loved, very, very well worn, and definitely a deck that I still go to when I need to do a reading for myself. There's specific kinds of questions and specific readings that I will reach for this deck. This is the one, obviously one of the older editions. I don't think that this is the original 1978 edition, although it may be. There's a couple different ways that this box looks. A lot of times you see this written in red. I think this might be a little bit more rare. But the reason why I wanted to show you that is because M.M. Moline was very largely inspired by that deck and used the same keywords on the deck that we're opening today. Now, originally she put out this deck, which is called the Tabula Mundi, in just a black and white edition. And I think that's one that she did on a Kickstarter. I wanted to take a look at how much I paid for this because it's a special edition and it wasn't cheap. Oh, it looks like I ordered 2 decks. Well, I didn't even know that. Okay, so the Tabula Mundi Coloris Arcus, which after she made the black and white edition, then she made a colored version. The 14 card expansion pack, and the Tabula Mundi Babylon edition. That was the expensive one. That was $150. And that's because it was very limited edition and it was only 156 of those made. So it's been so long since I got these that I didn't even remember that there was 2 decks in here. So she has this sticker that she's included. It says, Heru is my muse. And Heru is who the Golden Dawn consider the great angel or archangel, if you will, of the tarot. I've always imagined Heru to show up like Thoth as the Egyptian god, the deity, the ibis with the long beak. But there is Golden Dawn invocations of Heru. You can call upon this god to help you to connect more deeply with the tarot. That's something that we do in some of my classes. So let's see if I can get in here. Okay, so here are the 2 decks. I'm really actually so shocked that I have 2 editions. And this one you can see is all wrapped up with a seal. And I feel like my original thought was, now that I'm recalling this, was that I would buy the Babylon edition but leave it sealed, and that I would have this edition in order to open it and share it. And we're gonna start by opening this one. And it is also numbered here on the back. It says it's number 792. And you can already see that this is very beautiful, how it's presented with the sigil of earth, the 4 elements, the seal of Malkuth there. The Tabula Mundi. Mundi is the world. And go ahead and open it. There we see a title card, and it's signed, and it has the number there. Ooh, all right. So the first thing that I see is just this small pack of cards, and this must be the expansion pack. And then we see the deck of cards. I mean, these backs, you guys. We see a little book here, and everything just done so luxe and rich with just this nice detailing. And it has the invocation of Heru right in the beginning here. And it says, in the divine name, E-A-O, I invoke thee, thou great angel Heru, who art set over the operations of this secret wisdom. Lay thine hand invisibly on these consecrated cards of art, that thereby I may obtain true knowledge of hidden things, to the glory of the ineffable name. Amen. And she uses the titles of the cards as set forth in Book T, which we've talked about in other videos, that tarot grimoire that both the Golden Dawn and the Lima use. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this deck. And so you'll see what I'm talking about here is the Ace of Wands, and it says the root of the powers of fire. So this statement is made from the Book T, and just right off the bat, you guys, I mean, look at these backs. They are just too amazing. You see all the rainbow holograms there with all of the suits. It says Abrahadabra here, a magical formula that Crowley was quite a fan of. So I'm just going to go through these for you guys. And one thing you'll see is that the planetary and zodiacal attributes are here. Those are the deacons. So we see Four of Wands is Venus and Aries. And then we would move into the 5, 6, and 7, which these three will be in Leo. So you'll see the 5 is Saturn in Leo. The 6 of Wands, wow, beautiful, is Jupiter in Leo. And then the 7 of Wands, Mars in Leo. And then the next 3 are going to be in Sagittarius. So see, they go by the same element as the element of the cards. So all of the cards are wands, wands are fire. So the 2s through 10s of this suit will correspond to the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and then here's Sagittarius. And I mean, the imagery here, I am very confident in saying that I am not disappointed and that I absolutely do see that these are going to greatly affect, in a positive way, I believe, my knowledge and understanding of the tarot. I think it's such an ambitious thing to take on something like recreating the imagery. Not that this is a reimagining of the Thoth deck, because it definitely is her own thing, but because that's already such an iconic deck that, you know, it sets the bar pretty high, and I think she's done it. I mean, I believe that she's created something here that is inspired and can stand up to that deck and be really on that level. The work that she's done shows. Look at that in the desert with 5 of Cups. There's the 6. And again, you'll see the same keywords here that you would see on the Thoth deck. Debauch. So I'm going to go through these for you guys. And just the colors that she's chosen, they are just so vibrant. In the Thoth cards, remember the kings are actually called knights, and then the queens, we talked about this when I showed you guys the Gil tarot, and then the knights and pages are called princes and princesses. Wow, look how beautiful she is. I love that. Here are the swords. That's a stunner, isn't it? I love that. So, wow. I wish that I could make this just like an hour-long video and spend a lot of time going through these with you guys. But I know that we're going through the images kind of quickly. But this is really, wow, look at that. 9 of Swords. This is really, really epic, I think. Now, one of the things you'll see is on the court cards, it has the element of the element. So, Knight of Swords, which remember, it's a little bit confusing, but it would be the level of a king in most, Marseille or a Rider-Waite style deck. So, it's the highest level, as each of the court cards describes a different level of mastery over their element. So kings or knights would be the highest level of mastery, and all kings or knights in this case correspond to the element of fire, and swords correspond to air. Therefore, the Knight of Swords is the fire of air. Queens correspond to water, and so the Queen of Swords is the water of air. Wow, look at her. Got some little blue guys. They look like they're from Avatar, right? But these really are doing it for me. There's something that when it comes to the illustration of people in the decks, I have feelings about that. Sometimes I find that there we see the 3 elements of the alchemists, sulfur, salt, and mercury. That sometimes, oh, the green man, cool. you know, the faces look a little bit too hyper realistic, or they remind me of someone I know. And it's one of the reasons why I've always loved the Rider-Waite, is that there are expressions on the faces, but they don't look too much like people that I feel like they're portraits that serve to be distracting. And I think that she's walked that line in this deck. This is beautiful, all arranged. The 10 of discs in the form of the tree of life. Do you see it? This is the way that the spheres lay out. Very cool. So see what I mean when she has these illustrations of these people here. I'm just not finding that they're awkward or distracting. They're much more kind of classical. There's the Princess of Discs. And then we should be getting into the majors. So excited for these. There's the Fool, and now we will see the Kabbalistic attributes of the Hebrew letter, and then the corresponding astrological aspect, one of three, either an element or a planet or a zodiac sign. And the Thoth deck is in alignment with the Golden Dawn tradition. So a departure from some of the other decks that we've looked at, which remember placed Aleph at the Magician, because in those older decks, in the Worth deck and the Papist deck and in the Grand Esoterico and in the Balbi deck, they placed the Fool in between Judgment and the World. And the Fool got the letter Sheen, the second to last letter of the alphabet. Well, Golden Dawn placed the Fool at the beginning. And so they assigned the Fool the letter Aleph. And then the second card, the Magician, received the letter Bet, the second letter of the alphabet, and so forth. And the assignments of the astrological aspect, which corresponds to the letter, if you recall, comes from the Sefer Yetzirah. That's where it's laid out, which letters correspond to which signs. But of course, the Golden Dawn also updated that. They kept the zodiac signs the same, the elements the same. They changed the order of the planets. There's the Empress. And here we see the beginning of the zodiacal signs. So the Emperor corresponding to Aries. Now, even if you didn't know that the Emperor was Aries, it should be somewhat intuitive to you because he has the ram's horns. You see that in other depictions on his throne. And so you would imagine that that sign would go with this. Now I'm seeing something as I'm saying that she has used the Golden Dawn attributes that the Thoth deck used. Here's an interesting thing that you guys might know, which is that Crowley ended up changing some of the attributes. He actually just switched two. This is because he had channeled some guide. He wrote this down in the Book of the Law. And one of the statements in that book is, Zadi is not the star. And this is the letter Zadi. So in the regular order of the major arcana, as the Golden Dawn does it, the letters just go in order from the first letter Aleph to the last letter Tav. But after the creation of the Book of the Law, then from that point forward, Crowley had changed the way that he placed the letters. And so that's what this artist did. So that's why we see Zadi here on the Emperor. That means that we will probably see, if I'm not mistaken, the letter He, which is normally the letter for the Emperor when we get to the star card. But the rest of them do seem to fall in order, and I've never really understood why it is that Crowley changed those. You know, my teachers did teach me some thelemic magic, and there are some practices of thelema that I like very much and that I do practice. But for the most part, you know, I don't consider myself a thelemite. I consider myself a Hermetic Kabbalist that works largely in the Golden Dawn tradition. And you'll see also that some of the names of the major arcana are different, and these are the same as the names that Crowley used. So instead of this card being called Justice, he called it Adjustment. Think of that as sort of the balance finding its own level. There's the Hermit. I think this is Cerberus. Is that the name of the three-headed dog? And then Fortune, the wheel. She's got this lemur here rising up, and then the serpent turning into the hand coming down, the quill, and the owl up above. And Strength becomes the card Lust. And we should point out that Lust or Strength becomes the 11th key, so it's switched with Justice or Adjustment, which would have been 8. So then we see the 12th key, the Hanged Man. There's Death. Whoa, what a crazy, cool, weird death, right? Temperance becomes Art. and the rainbow of promise, the devil, the tower. Ooh, yeah, yikes. And then the star. And we have, yes, the letter Hey. Oh, just beautiful, gorgeous, bravo. There is the moon, the sun. They remind me just ever so slightly, this one especially, of the Tarot of the Holy Light. Do you guys know that deck? Another gorgeous deck. But that deck draws all on old alchemical engravings. It's all inspired by that. But I think it's because some of the symbolism in this, it just very much looks like it comes from those old alchemical texts. But this deck also feels futuristic, which at the time, the Thoth deck was very much that. It was very much a deck for the new age and the coming age of Aquarius. And then we see here, rather than judgment, it's the eon. And then finally, the world becomes the universe. Very, very cool. Oh, I'm just so excited about these, you guys. Okay, let's go ahead and open up the expansion pack here. And I see that the card on the front here is Lust. And so I guess that these are maybe just alternative versions. I don't think that they're additional Arcana. I think that maybe she just made two different versions of certain cards, which we've seen that in some other decks. You know, we saw that in the Tarot of Prague. You got an extra sun and an extra death card, and you can kind of pick the one that you like the most. In the Thoth decks, and I think even the ones that are the modern day printing, you get multiple versions of the Magician. So you get a couple different Magician cards. Now, one of the things that I'm noticing that's different right off the bat is that these cards have silver borders on them. And I believe that that's also going to be true of that Babylon edition. Go ahead and take a look, because this card looks very much like one we saw already. It would have been the Two of Wands. Okay, but it's not quite the same. It's similar, but look, this is the Deacons of Aries. Remember, I showed this to you guys, that the 2, 3, and 4 of Wands would correspond to Aries. They would be the Deacons of Aries, and then the 5, 6, 7 to Leo, and then the 8, 9, 10 to Sagittarius. And then it works that way through each of the suits. So this is the Deacons of Leo. I'm guessing that what she's done here is she's taken imagery from these three cards and she's made a composite picture. So she took these pine cone topped pillars here, the Masonic tool here, and she's taken a lot of the imagery from this card and she's put them all together, and then she's added the ram's horns from the Emperor as well. Wow, what a cool idea. So she goes through each of the cards. So in the Deacons of Leo, we're going to see the imagery of the 5, 6, and 7 of Wands plus imagery from the Strength card, or the Lust card, I should say. So then in the Deacons of Sagittarius, love this big crystal wand, we'll see imagery from the 8, 9, and 10 of Wands and from the major arcana of Temperance, which was called Art. And the Deacons of Cancer, which would correspond to the 2, 3, and 4 of Cups, to the major arcana of the Moon. So what an absolutely cool idea. It's like she's taken all of those and placed them into one card. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot going on there now. I don't know that you would use these cards. I probably wouldn't shuffle these into the deck and use them all together, but draw these separately or use them on their own. And it was just $11 to add on the expansion pack, so that was definitely going for that. And then finally we have a Tree of Life card. It says the Minitum Mundum. And you can see all of the keys laid out here on the Tree of Life. So we see 0, the Fool, 1, the Magician, 2, the High Priestess, and they go down the tree in order, just like this. And so normally, again, like I said, Golden Dawn would just place them right down in order, and the letters Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet down in order. But Crowley decided to switch the star and the Emperor. So normally where the Emperor would be up here as the 4th key, He put it down here and he put the star up here. But oftentimes, even though you don't see the Hebrew letter, you actually see a depiction in these Thoth images of what it is that the Hebrew letter means. So each Hebrew letter also has a key word or a meaning, especially in Western mystery tradition. They've boiled it down to a single word. And Zadi corresponds to a fishhook and Hey corresponds to a window. So you might sometimes see that in here, but I don't see an indicator of either of those things, either a window or a fishhook in either of these cards. So I'm curious, do you know if these were already switched before this deck was created or if that's something that came later? And in the minor cards of the Thoth deck, you do see those tarot deacons. They're just not as obvious as they are here, where they're just laid right here on the corners. Because, for instance, here on the Six of Cups, this is the sun in Scorpio, and you see the sigil for the sun here, and you see the sigil for Scorpio way down here. It's very tiny, so they're not necessarily going to pop right out at you the way that you're going to be able to read those deacons very easily here. I can see that the cards are a little bit smaller, but this is a pretty large version of the deck. And I just can't get enough of these backs. They're so mesmerizing, aren't they? So I'm not going to open the Babylon, and I might end up opening this one on a future edition. Like I said, I have a feeling it might have these silver-edged borders. I don't know what else is going to be different about it. I do know that there's some unique aspects in the packaging, but for now I'm going to leave that one and play with my Tabula Mundi Coloris Arcus, which is the name of the colored edition. I'll leave all the information down below. I believe that you may still be able to get some of the versions of this deck, and there's another deck also, the Rosetta Tarot, that's also created by the same artist. So as always, thank you guys so much for being here with me today. I appreciate you guys, and I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.